Welcome into Inside the Arc. I'm your host, Alec Busse. Happy to be joined, as always, by, I guess we can call him a quitter now if we'd like, since he quit the beat. Brandon, how we doing, man?
I prefer the term seeking other opportunities. But yes, I'm doing well. We got 40 days left till college basketball season, so trying to get through these dog days. But other than that, doing well. How about you, Alec?
Doing really well. I'm trying to get through the doom and gloom of Illinois football along with our guests today, James Boyd. James, happy to be joined by you. We talk all the time about football and our doom and gloom for that, like I said. And now we get to talk about something that brings a lot of joy to Illinois fans, basketball. How are we doing, man?
Doing good. I'm excited. The season should be really, really fun. I mean, obviously, Illinois is one of the best teams in the Big Ten in the country. If you tell Illini fans they're outside of the top 15, they might lose their minds. But I look forward to all of that just because I think basketball is a simpler sport to understand than football. It's on a surface level. And my favorite sport in general, so it should be fun.
So do you want to say they're a non-top 15 team and get killed on Twitter before the season, or do you want to do that like midway through?
No, I think they have enough to be considered a legitimate top 15 team in the country. I wouldn't put them top 10, certainly not top 5. I think that losing a first-team All-American guard is a big deal, no matter who you bring back or who you have transfer in. Just my opinion. But, I'm sure that after saying this, if you post this, I'm going to get somebody in my mentions telling me I'm absolutely wrong. So that's what I look forward to.
James, I agree. I have them outside the top 10 right now, too, around that 15 line. So if you're going to direct anger at James, you can spread it towards me as well.
Really? You can direct it at the entire Inside the Arc podcast because I have them around 15 as well. So, no, really. And James, this kind of goes back to a conversation Sam and I have had in the past couple of months about this Illinois basketball team and where they kind of stack up nationally. And we just think college basketball in general this year is going to be a lot better than it was last year. You look at last year and there was a very clear top 2 teams. I think the entire season you had Baylor and you had Gonzaga, and there's a reason those 2 teams were in the national championship and why one of them won the national title. But then you kind of had just like a cluster of teams that were just kind of randomly kind of bouncing around. This year, I mean, you look at the top 10 and it's like, wow, like you've got a loaded Texas team. You've got a loaded Kansas team. You've got Villanova's up there, obviously, Gonzaga. And there's so many more teams that we can just continue to list. But I feel like Illinois is in a great spot entering the year, and they might be the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. And I think Illini fans are probably going to be upset at me for saying that, like we just said, but that's what I think. So where do you kind of have them at right now? Not just in the Big Ten, but kind of nationally outside of just the rankings perspective, like we just said?
I feel like I'm sorry to jump to the end of the season, but I think it all comes down to, can you get past the second weekend and have a chance to really get into just tournament play? I mean, that's the biggest thing. We could talk about who they brought back, what their ceiling is. I mean, with the talent that they have, I would be surprised if they were able to contend for a Big Ten regular season title or a tournament title. But at the same time, I think at this point, Brad Underwood's been here for a while. He's recruited pretty well. Kofi, after the entire saga of me and you and all of us writing stories about him leaving, staying, and then selling stuff on the player's trunk and then coming back, and having him come back is obviously huge. And I think that it all comes down to just what can you do when you get to that Big Ten tournament time of the season. I'm sorry to jump to the end. I'm excited for it to start, obviously, but I think that's what matters the most. And that'll pretty much determine where I think they'll be. But I think they'll be fine as far as the regular season. I don't expect them to reel off 10 straight Big Ten wins, something crazy like that. But I do expect them to win quite a few games this year. And obviously there will be a consensus Big Ten champion for the regular season. So that'll be some added, animosity there with different programs, which should be fun.
Well, James, before Sim jumps in here real quick, let's give you another reason to maybe make Illinois fans upset. Who was the real Big Ten champion last year?
You're putting James on a spot early, man.
I know, man. And
he might never want to come back. He might retire.
There you go. Honestly, hey, it was Michigan. I mean,
hey, we got another one on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, you can be upset about it, but this is my thing. Okay, this is my thing. I have no problem with Illinois fans, and specifically not even really the fans because you don't play, but the players and the coaching staff taking issue with that. It's kind of like the Michael Jordan thing. I took offense to that. I took that personal. Whatever you got to do to put that chip on your shoulder and dig deeper or play better or play with more fire, you do that. But I mean, everyone agreed to what it was going to be, And then when it came to it, it's like, wait a second. Oh no, like I don't like that's everyone agreed to it before the trend, like before everything transpired. So again, I graduated from Illinois. I'm not a homer by any means. I just went to school here. So I'm sorry if that upsets anybody. But I look forward to, again, a really, really fun season. And one that'll be hopefully more normal considering how COVID's with the vaccine rate, things like that. Just hopefully it'll be more normal and we'll have just more like regular talking points outside of like what could have been.
All right, so let's kind of go into what we kind of planned here after kind of getting off the rails here. I kind of just want to talk about what we're most excited about for this season. And Sam, you can kind of jump in here, obviously. I'm just super excited for, like you kind of said, James, or like the normalcy of a season and not to be like everything's getting back to normal kind of person. Because I think that just, quite frankly, isn't like completely true at this point. But I do think it's going to be really exciting to have Orange Crush back inside State Farm Center, have a full 15,500 in the orange and blue on a nightly basis across the entire season. Like, I'm super excited for that. But if there's one like weird thing I'm more excited for than anything, and Sam, you'll like this, it's Alfonso Plummer heaters. Like, that kid is magnetic. Like, he just makes so many shots in such a short amount of time. And I know Orange Crush and like State Farm Center is going to get really loud when Curbelo and Kofi do like their thing in the alley-oop game and the pick and roll. But like, I'm so much more excited to just see how loud they get when Alfonso Plummer hits like 5 threes in a row on like 7 possessions. Like, I'm beyond excited for that to happen.
Yeah, I think this is a team that's going to feed off the crowd energy. You know, a guy like Trent Frazier, who last year famously got that technical at Indiana for talking to their bench. Coleman Hawkins got a technical against Penn State. Like, this is a team that likes to talk. They're energetic, and that crowd noise should only invigorate them. And then when they go on the road too, you know, they love to say roadkill. They have that warrior mindset on the road. So I think that could help them on the road as well, because I know me personally, I've always preferred to shut another team's crowd down as opposed to like kind of hyping my own crowd up. So I think that having fans at both home and away games will be fun to watch.
Yeah, to kind of add to that, Brandon sent me home with a loss at the Arc over a month ago. So we left for a 3. I said no 2s. He hits a 2s and 3s. We go 1s and 2s to pick up basketball for those who don't know. So he hurt me. So I know that feeling very well, being shut up. But in all seriousness, I think that I want to ask you guys actually, what was it like to cover a team where they're creating their own energy? How good was Illinois at that? And how do you think that'll even help them, I guess, add to their own home atmosphere? If that makes sense.
Wait, what was the question? Sorry.
How do you think, I know a lot of it had to do with creating their own atmosphere last year. So how do you think the bench reaction and things like that will only add to that crazy home atmosphere that'll be at State Farm this year?
I don't know, Sam. I feel like you and I can both answer this pretty well. I feel like Coleman was like the biggest like energy guy on the bench last year. And now he's going to get so many more minutes. So I'm interested to see like if he keeps that going on the bench this year, if there's someone else who kind of steps up. Like Luke Goody seems to really fit in well, like personality wise, with a lot of these guys who see him messing with him on social media all the time, like on their Snapchats, they're just posting like ugly pictures of Luke and just saying like got him all the time, and they're hilarious. But like I feel like Luke Goody could step into that role. I feel like Coleman will keep it going, and then I feel like Trent and Plummer will keep it going as well. And we already know how much energy Curbelo has.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing last year was when Illinois played at Indiana, and at State Farm, you're kind of higher up, or you were last year at least. So you couldn't really hear it as much. Like, you can hear people if they're really loud from the court, but at Indiana, we were like right by the bench. And that was for me the best look at like how loud the bench was, how energetic guys were. I'll give a shout out to walk-on Connor Servin. Like, he brought a ton of energy, and I know he's going to continue to do that. And there's that famous, it's somewhat famous video of him and Coleman now against Michigan when like Trent hit the step back 3.
Yeah.
And like, I think Connor's like riding on Coleman's back or something. Like, yeah, those guys have a lot of energy. And I think you saw that last year. And obviously now, like, assistant coaches, GAs, they're gonna have to be louder with their call outs, especially, you know, you're at Mackey Arena and you're not gonna be able to hear them at the other end of the bench. Guys have to be louder and louder on the court, but I think they have that energy. So I wanted to switch over to some kind of X's and O's or talk about the roster a little bit. James, when you look at this team this year, like what's maybe the biggest question you have about this roster or this group?
To me, it's probably just outside shooting. Like, do you have enough to make it work with Kofi being like your centerpiece? I know Ayo's had his struggles with the NBA 3-point line, but he turned himself into a pretty good college 3-point shooter. And obviously he was the one running the show. Me and Alec talked about this right before we went on, air. If Curbelo's jump shot is better or very consistent this year, I mean, obviously everyone expects to make a jump, but to me, how big the jump is kind of depends on how consistent his jump shot is. So that's my only thing. And I think that kind of, lends itself back to what we talked about with Plummer. Like, I know he's a smaller guard. Defense matters. I mean, if you're not going to play defense for Brett Underwood, you're not going to play much. So I think that his role and the other players around them being able to just knock down consistent outside shots will make the biggest difference in this team. Because if Kofi's going to be better, which I think he will be, I mean, I don't think that he's going to be any worse by any means. Like, he'll be a better player. He went to the NBA G League camp and things like that. So he'll be better. It's just, can you make it to where it's hard to double team him without, having to pay?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that's something I hadn't really thought about, because when Ayo was running the show for them last year, you at least had 4 good shooters around Kofi, especially with DeMonte Williams' leap and when they put Jacob Grandison in the starting lineup. And so if Curbelo isn't a shooter, you're essentially playing 2 non-shooters. It's at the point guard and center position, which isn't as bad. But if you have 2 non-shooters on the court, it can definitely cramp the spacing. And I feel solid about the rest of the roster and their ability to shoot. But yeah, if you have 2 non-shooters in 2021, that makes it really hard to. If that's not peak offense, that's not what you think when you think modern basketball. So I think that's a really good point. Something I hadn't considered.
Here's to kind of continuing this conversation about the outside shooting. And I don't know how. Maybe this is harsh or maybe it's not. I don't know. And you guys can comment on that if you'd like. But I look at a guy like DeMonte Williams. Like, he shot 54% from 3 last year. And his 3 previous seasons, his highest 3 percentage was 31%. And that was in 18-19. And then in 19-20, he fell back below 30%. Like, is it fair to expect him to shoot over 50% from 3 again this year? I mean, like, that's a super high number to begin with. But, like, I don't think I can expect him to knock down that many threes again. And I know a lot of them are like catch and shoot and like he's open kind of opportunities, and that's still going to be there, especially with Curbelo running the point. But I don't know how confident I am that he's going to be that good of a catch and shoot guy like he was last year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the best 3-point shooters in the world, I mean, catch and shoot or often don't shoot over 50%. I mean, for very, very many years. I mean, that was, I think that's an anomaly. But I do think that's a testament to the work that he put in the offseason. Now, if he takes a guy like Curbelo under his wing and says, hey, come get 1,000 shots up with me, it worked for me, you can kind of see like, hey, this worked for him, maybe it'll work for me. You might not make a huge jump like that because Curbelo, one, he'll have the ball in his hands more, so he won't be catching and shooting. But to me, it's like, can you just keep a free throw line jumper consistent? Like, can you do that? Then it opens up the floor a lot more. But to shoot 54%, no. But I do expect DeMonte to still be like that 3-and-D type of guy. And again, just having that experience, like, I don't think DeMonte really even, I mean, everyone says it. I don't think he really cares about numbers seriously. I mean, I don't think he cares about any of that stuff. He's old school in that way. I mean, you all have been around him more than me the last few years where DeMonte just shows up and works. So I think that if he continues to do that, they'll be fine from his aspect. It's just, can the other guys pick it up a little bit to kind of even out him coming back down to earth?
Yeah, I think last year at the beginning of the season, teams treated DeMonte as a complete non-shooter because for the first part of his career, he was. So I think he'll have to adjust to now on the scouting report, it says, hey, this guy can hit open, catch and shoot threes. You have to close out harder. But I still think when he's wide open, he clearly has that confidence now. He had some huge shots last year. I believe he hit one against Iowa or Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament. He had a huge one at Ohio State. So he has that confidence, but I agree. I think a regression is coming because that's just natural.
Yeah. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if he did shoot it well from the perimeter again this year. I just don't think it's fair to expect the guy to shoot it over 50%. I mean, he was over 60% from 3 for most of last season. And he kind of hit like a little bit of a slump, but not too much. And the biggest thing for DeMonte last year was like, he didn't force any bad shots. Like, if you guys remember, like early in his career, like he would get it and he wouldn't even look to shoot. Like last year, he got it and like he looked to shoot if he was open. And I thought that was maybe the biggest difference in DeMonte's game last year, especially on the perimeter, is that he didn't seem scared to put the ball on the ground and try and get to the rim if need be. But more importantly, he just seemed to be willing to take open shots that he probably wasn't willing to do in the past. And to me, that's really important. And that was a major step in his game. And honestly, I think it was a major step for the team last year that probably went really overlooked, because Brad talked all the time about how he has all this confidence in the world in Demonte to make shots and do different things offensively. And we in the media are like fans, I think we're all like, why do you have all this confidence in him? Like, he doesn't have confidence in himself. Well, last year he showed that he had the confidence in himself and he knocked it down.
Completely agree. I mean, the guy, he's a worker. I mean, again, just when you put in the time, it's evident, you can see it. I mean, again, I don't expect a 54% jump for anybody else on the team, but I mean, he's got a nice stroke, and the rest of the guys will obviously have to pick it up. And just going back to what we've talked about, if you can space the floor, you got a good chance of being pretty dominant inside, because, I mean, Kofi's still the most physically imposing player in college basketball.
So speaking of wing players and three-point shooting and 3-and-D guys, I think my biggest question mark is, what is Austin Hutcherson?
Yes. We've got to this part of the podcast.
What are we going to – he hasn't played a basketball, like an official game, since February 16th, 2019. Like, I was a freshman at Maryland at the time, and now I'm a senior at Illinois. So that, like, just to put that into perspective, and he hasn't played a game in so long. He's coming off a back injury, which is he seems to be healthy
too.
Yeah, he seems to be healthy now, but you know how back injuries linger. I mean, everyone who's like insiders are saying he's looked great. He looks great in practice, this and that. But I mean, he's never played a D1 game, hasn't stepped on the court in 2.5 years. So for me, it's like, what are you going to get from him? Because he's kind of the missing piece and player that Illinois hasn't really had in years, like a true wing, 6'6", 6'7", athletic, a good shooter. I guess they had Alan Griffin, but he was a little shorter. But this is the kind of player that Illinois doesn't have and can be a matchup problem in the Big Ten. So to me, like, he's the biggest X factor for this team. And I have no idea what we're going to get.
I feel like he could be anywhere from like all Big Ten to like last guy off the bench, like last man in the rotation. And that's just so volatile, and it's so hard to like project where he could be. And I think if you told Illinois fans, like, you get out of Austin Hutcherson this year what you got out of Jacob Grandison last year, I think they should be pretty happy. Like, I think that would be a pretty decent, like, numbers wise, I don't think it would be that great. Like, Jake didn't score a whole bunch. He didn't get a lot of rebounds, but he kind of did a lot of the things that you just kind of needed someone to do. And I guess I say that expecting Jacob Grandison to maybe take a step. And I don't know how fair it is to maybe expect Jacob Grandison to take a huge step, but I do think he can take a step forward in this game. But am I thinking that that's too little for Austin Hutcherson this year, guys?
I think that's actually a very fair assessment. I mean, the biggest, I guess, insider who's been saying that Hutch is going to be really, really good is Coach Underwood himself. I mean, no one's really prompted him to say these things, and he's media savvy. He knows what to put out there and what not to. But I think for me and for all of us, I guess outsiders, we want to just see, how does he move? I mean, from a physical standpoint, how does he move? Is it fluid? Does it look like he's ever been hurt? Like, I'm not trying to be negative, but when a guy comes back from a back injury, that's a pretty big deal. And he's had, like you said, quite a while since he's played a college basketball game. So I just want to see how he moves from just a physical standpoint. And then, like you said, if he's as good as Underwood is kind of like hinting at, then that kind of changes, to my opinion, the trajectory of the team, if he can be that legitimate third guy. But that's asking a lot, again, to put on a guy who hasn't played a Division I basketball game in his career. So I'm excited to see him play, to see him get out there, and maybe for him himself to, I guess, regain confidence that I can play at this level. I mean, obviously I would assume he's a confident guy. He can't be unconfident, not play and play Big Ten basketball, but he just hasn't done it. So the experience will help him. And I think the experience of everyone around him will help too. I mean, you've got an old team, so it helps for them guys to tell him, hey, this is what works in the Big Ten. This is what you'll need to get better at to succeed at this level.
I'll provide some insider info here on his movement. Austin Hutcherson he's actually my neighbor. He lives like 2 doors down from me, and he looks fine walking down the hallway. So
all right.
That translates well to the basketball court.
Yeah.
Playing against Caleb Houston, yes.
Yeah. But I think the good thing for Illinois is there's two kind of good things that maybe they didn't have last year. One, they have a lot of time to kind of to ramp him up, and get him, maybe he's on like a minute count early or something like that. And they have the opportunity to do that with a pretty easy schedule to start. And like, there's only a few non-conference games that really scare me that I'm like, we could really use a guy like that. So I think they can ease him in, see how he looks. So by the time you get to Big Ten play, he will be ready to go if he's going to be ready. And the second thing is, he would be a great add and he would take them to another level, but they won't fail if he's not a thing, if he's not a concept. Like, they don't really have a wing like him, but we saw last year they can piece it together with Grandison. DeMonte will play any role you want him to play. Coleman Hawkins can provide some minutes at the 4, maybe that bumps those guys down. So I think that they don't necessarily need him to be a really good team, and their ranking doesn't reflect that. But if he is a guy, then maybe they can win the Big Ten or get up there.
Okay, guys, fun question for you then. Who starts a game first for Illinois this year? Austin Hutcherson or Coleman Hawkins? I feel like that's a fair question. Actually, I really do.
Yeah. James, you want to take this one?
I'll go first. He punted to me.
I really don't know. So that's why I asked you.
I'd probably go Coleman Hawkins first, just because he's been there in the system, I guess, longer. He's actually played, for the Illini. I feel like it's a safer bet. But again, it all comes down to how Hutchinson looks. I'm excited just to get to the exhibition game. I was here in school a couple of years ago when he lost to Eastern Illinois. Long way from that. So I'm excited to see what even happens in the whatever we can get. You know what I mean? Like, just whatever we can draw from players, coaches. We're going to a media day. Tomorrow we'll have a chance to, ask some more questions. So either way, I'm excited to see what happens. But I think that Coleman Hawkins is probably a safe bet.
Not even the exhibitions. If there's going to be a Midnight Madness, maybe they have some kind of dunk contest.
I need one of those, by the way.
Yeah,
I need to be in the dunk contest.
Yeah, if they have a Midnight Madness, there needs to be a dunk contest. Not that he would really have comp. Not that I don't think he'd have comp. Unless you want to see a Kofi like cockback slam. But yeah,
there with the wordplay, Sim. Good one.
Oh, I didn't even realize. Wow. Maybe I should go back to journalism. But no, I'll go with, to answer your question, Alec, I'll go with Coleman Hawkins as well, just because positionally, like I said, I think they kind of have some wings, but they don't really have a true 4. Again, like, they got away with Jacob Grandison at the 4. They got away with DeMonte at the 4. But Coleman's a true 4 who fits really well next to Kofi, theoretically. We haven't really seen it, but with his passing and shooting, like, that should be a seamless fit. So I'll go with Coleman. And like James said, he's been in the system and he's not really coming off an injury. So are you going to disagree, or are you going with Coleman as well?
Well, before I give my answer, I just want to say I'm surprised it took you so long to come up with an answer, Mr. Coleman boy. No, I agree. I think it's going to be Coleman. I think it's just really tough for me to understand what Hutch is going to be. And like that, and maybe he comes out against Jackson State and he's in the starting 5. Like, would I be completely shocked if that happens? I don't think I'd be like blown away. No. I would be surprised, because I do expect Grandison to be in there along with obviously Trenton Curbelo and Kofi. And then I think it'll just be DeMonte at the 4 to start the year, but I don't think that's what it'll be at the end. So I will say Coleman gets in there first, but I think Coleman might just get in there because they need a 4 and they need another guy who they feel like can step out and space the floor along with Kofi and can step out and shoot it maybe a little bit as well. And Coleman just brings a lot of length that I think this team not necessarily doesn't have. Like, DeMonte Williams has a really long set of arms. Like, Jacob Grandison's long. Austin Hutcherson is really long. But Coleman's like just freakishly long. Like, his arms are so long. And I feel like I sound like Jay Billis on draft night talking about everyone's length. But he's just really long. And I feel like that's really important, especially because Kofi's a rim protector, but Kofi's not a rim protector that blocks a lot of shots. Omar Payne blocks a lot of shots. I think Coleman can block a lot of shots because his arms are super long, and quite frankly, he's a better athlete than Kofi is. Like, Kofi doesn't have an insane vertical. Not that Coleman does either, but Coleman can jump higher, and Coleman moves better laterally than Kofi probably is ever going to be able to, just because of the size they are. So I'll take Coleman as well. All right, that kind of leads me into my next question. What do you guys project as the starting five for this first game against Jackson State? And does it change at all kind of around like the bragging rights Christmas time? Or when does it kind of change for you, if at all?
I think the caveat, just to spice things up a bit, is what punishment does Kofi get for selling some of his stuff on the Players Trunk? And
I like your thought process, James.
I mean, this could change, how many games he plays in, or non-conference games, or what punishment. I mean, when we talked to Brendan Underwood last, he didn't seem too concerned about it. Kofi didn't either. But I'm assuming there's going to be some minor like punishment, or he's going to be reprimanded in some capacity for basically selling his stuff 2 weeks before you could. But caveat aside, I think that the starting five, to me, I've had this debate so much, but I mean, I think Kofi, Coleman, DeMonte Trent, yes, DeMonte Trent and Curbelo will probably be my five.
So you've got Coleman in there game one.
I think so. I think it will probably be just good. I mean, I think Jacob is probably going to be the more safer bet, but if you want to see what it looks like right away, I mean, Jackson State is obviously the team to kind of try it against, and to see how a bigger lineup would work, and having a true four out there. So I'll go there and see what happens. But at the same time, Grandison played for a national team over the summer, so I might be giving him, some slight there.
It took you a lot of thinking to come up with the Austin Hutcherson Coleman thing, and to say that Coleman would start game one for you.
There you go. I mean, I haven't seen Hutchinson, so like if I'm able to see him and he's great, I have, you can tell me I'm wrong and I'll change my opinion and all that stuff, but I'm just predicting stuff here, and I'm always right until I'm wrong.
So back to the Kofi punishment. Who gets a more strict punishment? Kofi for selling his own gear when he thought he was going to leave college, or Gonzaga head coach Mark Few for getting a DUI? Because it seriously might be Kofi. And those are two different levels of.
The weird thing about Mark Few is, like, I don't feel like there's a precedent for this at all. Like, we've had coaches get in trouble, but not for like a DUI. Like, a lot of times it's something like really serious off the field, or something, or court in this case, or something that just like doesn't really matter, like a regular speeding ticket. Like a DUI, you can't do that when you're coaching college basketball players. You can't do that.
I really don't know what the punishment will be for either. I mean, obviously one's way more serious than the other. You want to set example for the kids you coach. But in regards to, I guess, Kofi alone, I don't think it'll be much. I mean,
I feel like Kofi just misses a game. I don't think it'll be a half. I feel like a half punishment, like
that's like a college football thing. I feel like they don't do that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can do that in basketball.
Yeah, I think he gets at least one full game. But I think what softens the blow is the fact that NIL only got passed like 2 or 3 weeks right after he sold.
Does he get punished at all?
I think
so, because it's the NCAA and nothing ever makes sense with some of the rules they have.
NCAA has a chance to take out one of their best players in a game. They will gladly do it. So,
well, especially when that player is at Illinois, they love making Illinois an example, because like Illinois is not Kentucky. Like if it was Duke, if it was North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, go ahead, like you're fine. But Illinois is just good enough to where people will be like, oh, we can't do that. Good to know. We won't let our players do that. So like, I could see him be like, you know what, Kofi, you're ineligible for the first half of the season. I'm exaggerating. It's not going to be that strong. But I mean, I just pulled up Gonzaga's not scheduled. They don't play anyone for real. This is why people don't like Gonzaga basketball, Sim. You'll love this. Who do you think their first game is against?
Who cares? Who plays a good game on opening night?
Duke, Michigan State, Kansas.
Well, they don't invite Gonzaga to the Champions Classic. Gonzaga plays a terrific non-conference schedule, and I don't want to hear this Gonzaga doesn't play anybody slander, because they go out there.
You know what? All right. Do you know who they play on November 13th? I know exactly what you're going to be doing at this time.
No, who do they play?
They play Texas.
There we go. Yeah, I'll be watching that game.
They also play UCLA and Duke and Alabama. Wow, they're non-conference.
Yeah, they're not scared in the non-con. They're not scared. All right, we're kind of going off the rails here. I want to go back to the starting lineup because that was the original question that went on a main but I think, yeah, you lock in Curbelo, you lock in Frazier, you lock in Kofi if he's eligible to play. I think those three guys will start every game. And then I think to start the year, just given the success they had last year and the familiarity, they go with DeMonte and Jacob Grandison at the 3 and 4. And then I think that could switch by the end of the year. I do think that maybe they play a team like Arkansas in the Thanksgiving tournament, and Arkansas is a team with a lot of speed and size on the wing, and they're like, we need a guy like Hutcherson or Coleman. So I think you see it by the time the second stint of Big Ten play rolls around, we'll see a new starting lineup. But I think it starts with the 5 kind of vets.
Okay, guys, I kind of want to ask another question here, and this is a guy we haven't talked about at all yet, Omar Payne. And this is just a super basic question, but what are your guys' expectations for him? And again, Brad's really talked up Omar Payne. I don't really take a lot of what he says about guys in the offseason for, put it in concrete because he said Mark Smith was the next Jason Kidd or something like that. But what do we think that Omar Payne can be this year?
I think that he could provide the rim protection that you need to grind out games when your offense isn't that great, frankly. I mean, he provides a different level of rim protection, like you alluded to earlier, just above the rim. I mean, who's going to take a layup straight up over Omar Payne unless you're a freak athlete or a great, guard or something like that. So I think that he'll provide just raw athleticism that you kind of just need. I mean, you can't teach the stuff that he has. I mean, you can teach him to be in better position and things like that, but he just provides length, and he's a big-time athlete. You don't go to Florida unless you are. And I think he probably has something to prove that he can do a little bit more with more opportunity and more of a role. So I think that he could be a very good reserve piece for them. And defensively, he's a guy that can just get you some extra minutes with, if Kofi gets in foul trouble, something like that, where you can use him to just wade through the water a little bit.
I almost feel kind of bad for Omar because I feel like if Kofi wasn't here, he would have been a really good player. Like Curbelo would have extracted a ton from him. And when he committed here, I don't think we thought Kofi was coming back. So I don't think he can play next to Kofi, which is the biggest problem for him.
Right.
There was some rumor about his shooting this offseason. Everyone apparently can shoot in the offseason. So
Trace Jackson Davis too.
Yeah, you watch when you guys go to media day tomorrow, the guys you didn't think could shoot are all of a sudden shooting. And we'll see at the exhibitions who's really shooting. But if he can't play with Kofi, then and you want Kofi to play. Last 2 years, he's played 27 minutes per game. So you want him to be right around there, or probably want him to be more. He's one of the best players in the country. I just don't know how big his role is. Can Omar star in that role when he's on the court? Can he find the energy to, be this kind of spark plug off the bench, like James said, on the defensive end? Because I think that's where he'll provide most of his value. I just think it's going to be tough, knowing no matter what he does, he can't really start or earn more minutes. So I think with him, it comes down to mindset and energy, because when he's on the court, like James said, I think he'll be a really good shot blocker.
Sam, I'm happy you mentioned kind of feeling bad for Omar Payne, because I kind of do as well. Think back to his freshman year at Florida, which was 1920. They bring in Kerry Blackshear, and he kind of just is ahead of him on the depth chart, and he was supposed to play a lot as a freshman. He kind of lost that opportunity because of Blackshear, and then last season, it was supposed to be Omar Payne's opportunity to kind of take over the front court there, and they bring in Colin Castleton, and he doesn't really get that opportunity there last year. And then, like you said, coming here, I think he's expecting to be the guy, and then Kofi doesn't hear what he wants to hear in the draft process, and he comes back. So that I do feel bad for Omar Payne. I think I might be a little bullish on him. I kind of think he could be really good for Illinois. I just don't know what his minutes look like. I think if he's going to be really good, it's going to be because he does it in a role that's bigger than Georgie's, but it's nowhere near as big as Kofi's. And that's obvious on the surface, but you need him to be better than Georgie, I think, if you want to reach the ceiling that this team might have. Defensively, he's a better rim protector than Kofi is. I feel comfortable saying that. He's a better shot blocker. And honestly, in the pick and roll, his grade out numbers on Synergy and KenPom are super, super high. I'm really excited to see him and Curbelo in the pick and roll. as much as I am him and Kofi, like I kind of know what I'm getting with Curbelo and Kofi in the pick and roll, but Omar's just got a different athleticism. He has a 44-inch vertical. He's got really long arms. He's naturally, I just think he's a better athlete than Kofi is. And I know I said that about Coleman too, and I feel like I'm bagging on Kofi here, but like, I think that matters. And I feel like Omar Payne could be pretty good for Illinois off the bench. Do I think that they can be the best front court in the Big Ten? I don't know. When you look at what Michigan has with Hunter Dickinson and Diabate, former top 15 national recruit coming off the bench to back him up as well. But it's just like, is the potential there to be the best front court in the Big Ten? And I didn't even mention Purdue with Travion Williams and Zach Edey, a team that I think you were fairly familiar with last year, James, and those two players. But like, I don't know where I feel like those three front courts are 1A, 1B, 1C. Like, I don't feel like you can like separate them very much entering the year on paper.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be exciting, like you alluded to. I think Purdue's better than Illinois and arguably one of the best teams in the country, just because they're so experienced. I mean, I told you this before. I love, Matt Painter. I think he gets a lot out of his players. And I think Jaden Ivey could be a star. He was kind of turning into one before our eyes last year. So we'll see. But as far as Omar goes, I mean, again, 44-inch vertical for a guy his size, you can't teach that. So, and also, I guess we kind of danced around it. Maybe his minutes come down to how well Kofi can stay on the floor. I mean, if Kofi gets in foul trouble, I mean, there's certain nights where, we talk about Big Ten officiating. It's like you can maul somebody and it's nothing, or you could breathe on him and you got 2 quick fouls. So it just depends on what he can do in those release minutes. And that might be his role, like just relieving, Kofi and being able to just hold down the floor until you get your star back in there. I'm sure he probably thinks he can do more, which, I mean, every player should. But realistically speaking, I think his role is just throwing shots off the glass and keeping people out of the paint.
So when you look at what Illinois did this offseason, I think that that was a net even on swapping Adam Miller for Alfonso Plummer, essentially. I think Miller maybe had some more lineup versatility, given that he's a little bigger, and you could have maybe played him, Curbelo, and Frazier, whereas I think Plummer's too small to do that in most matchups. But I think when people talk about this team, is it better than last year's team? I really think people disregard how good Ayo was and just what he did for this team. So, James, how are they going to replace what Ayo did?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So, again, I wasn't on the beat like you all last year. For those of you who don't know me, I mean, I went here when I graduated. That was like the same year that Ayo had just committed. So that was like the beginning of the Ayo era. So I had to kind of like follow it from afar. And I mean, just even watching on TV, you see, this guy is different. Like, he's a program changer. I mean, he's the reason why, in my opinion, Underwood gets an extension, and everyone's saying that Illinois is back because he kind of helped them get there. He was that first guy to first top guy to commit and help the rebuild. So I don't think you replace that from a production standpoint and from a leadership standpoint. Like, Ayo is a very like high character guy. Like, you have a lot of talented players that get recruited and go places. But I mean, this is the same guy who wore like a suit to like the NBA draft combine and things like that, just because that's how he is. So I think that you lose a lot from a leadership standpoint, from a production standpoint. And I think that's where the COVID year really comes to effect, because normally, you lose Ayo, you lose Trent, and you lose DeMonte, but you got 2 of those guys back because of the extra year and the funkiness of how the world's kind of been. So I think they're not as good of a team, but because of the unique situation they're in, they should be able to be pretty close, not like straight up even with what they were last year. But I think that they, last year with Ayo, they're a Big Ten tournament champion. I think this year they're a contender. They might not win it all, but I think that they should be able to say firmly, we should contend even without this guy in our conference and in our conference tournament.
James, I'm happy you mentioned the leadership aspect of it. And as much as Ayo brought on the floor, I feel like replacing what he was in that locker room and what he meant to that team in practice and inside oven is maybe a bigger, bigger challenge than it was last year when you kind of think about it, because Ayo meant so much to the program and everyone knows that, but he was also a unanimous captain last year. Him and DeMonte Williams were voted as unanimous captains last season. So obviously you expect DeMonte to assume that same role this year, but we know DeMonte is not the most vocal person, at least with the media, and maybe he is with the team and that kind of environment. But who else steps up? Like, I think the obvious pick is Kofi, but you need another guard. Like, do you want that to be Andre Curbelo? I think that's the guy you want to do it off the court, on the court, and all those different things. So who do you guys think kind of steps up in that leadership role, which I think is just as important?
I think it almost.
And I'll punt it to you, Brandon. I think that you should take this one first. So.
I think it almost has to be Curbelo because he's the point guard. It's his team now. You know, late game scenario, he's going to have the ball in his hands, and he's a really smart basketball player. And he seems like a pretty vocal guy. I think that, you know, everyone respects him. So can he take that step up as a vocal leader? Because like you said, Alec, you know, DeMonte and Trent are veterans, but they've kind of not been the leader they've been leaders by example for 4 years. Kofi, I don't think is the most like vocal guy. And it's hard to relate to a guy like Kofi because his version of basketball is not the same for 95% of people in the world. So I think it has to be Curbelo.
I would agree with that. And I think that Curbelo has a personality for it. He doesn't seem too shy. I mean, his game is flashy. When he's on, he does stuff that kind of gets you going. And I think that this year it'll be more about just stepping into it and owning it. I don't know if he could have did the same thing last year because Ayo was the guy, the clear-cut guy, and a very good guy at that role. But I feel like your point guard, your leader, your ball handler, the guy who's going to get you into all your sets. Offensively, he's going to, let you know early keys on defense. It has to be him. And I think that we'll probably see Underwood put a lot of that on him. Even last year, I don't think he was afraid to call out Andre at certain times. I don't think he was able, and then in the same breath, praise him and let people know like this kid is as good as I'm telling you he is. So it'll be interesting to see how it really comes to fruition and what his version of leadership looks like. But I mean, I think the kid it's got to be him. I mean, everyone's saying you're going to be an All-American. So why wouldn't your All-American be one of your team leaders?
Guys, I also think this is a super interesting conversation because I remember getting a text from my dad about the captains last year when it was Ayo and DeMonte voted unanimously. And I think his response was like, Trent didn't get a single vote or whatever. And I was like, well, think about it. Like, Ayo's going to be there and DeMonte just kind of carries himself differently. I don't know if the captain thing matters that much for this team anymore and this program anymore. Brad talks all the time about his culture and where his culture is at and the everyday guys kind of thing. I kind of feel like it just doesn't matter if you have a C on your chest in practice, or I guess, they don't put it on your jerseys in games. Illinois doesn't.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, metaphorically speaking. Yeah, like I just don't think it matters that much. I think Kofi can say something in practice and get guys to do what they need to do. I think Trent very much so has that freedom to do that. And obviously DeMonte and Curbelo have it as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that just because, and we kind of all roll our eyes when we hear certain like coaches cliches like culture and 110% and stuff like that. But I mean, again, you're talking to somebody. I was here when John Gross was here and it was not good. And then, Underwood gets hired and you're just wondering, okay, so the way I look at it, everything that Underwood is saying now, he said years ago when he was hired. And he's made good on pretty much everything he said he would do. So I personally feel more inclined to believe him when he says the culture is changing, or this is our culture, or this is what we have going on in our locker room with these guys, all of them able to speak up. Again, I might roll my eyes if I'm not seeing this translate onto the court, but they're a reflection of him. And I think Brad's I think he's more like outwardly confident now because you can see the proof of it, but I think his players are going to reflect that as well. And he always talks about how you can't really be like nice when you're trying to be great. So you have plenty of guys on that team who are willing to call each other out and also call themselves out if they don't perform up to the level that we all know they're capable of. All
right, guys. So we're running out of time here. So before we get out of here, Any last thoughts that you guys have before media day? And we're recording this on Thursday. Media day's on Friday. I'll probably release it late Thursday night if I get a chance to. So any final thoughts entering Friday's media day, entering the season? We're just about 40 days away.
I got one last quick hitter. We talked about this on the podcast last year, but Ayo obviously last year, I think set or broke a school record with 2 triple doubles.
I like where this is going.
Yeah. Does Andre Curbelo top that this year? Or at least tie it?
Oh, I'm going to say no, just because of the rebound factor. I think he gets there with points and assists in a couple of games, but I mean, you got to remember Ayo 6'5", Curbelo 6'1". And I feel like his big man will have to be a little more friendly for him to get some of those rebounds in there. Might have to give a couple like, Russell Westbrook rebound type of thing in there. But I do like just the premise of that. I think, Curbelo has the ability to be an all-around type of guy. But I would take the under on that. If he's able to do it, though, I don't think any of us would be like flat out surprised, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I honestly think it might come down to how many minutes. Sim, when you and I had this conversation, you're like, oh, well, he'd have a good opportunity to get one against some non-con directional school early in the year. Yeah, but how many minutes does he get? And does Brad let him kind of cherry pick it like they let Ayo cherry pick it at Minnesota last year? Like Ayo deservedly got that triple double. Like the numbers say he got it, but they left him in to get it. So do they let Curbelo kind of cherry pick one, or does he get one legit? Who did he get it against? Wisconsin? Was that the first one?
I know he had one against Minnesota when they were up like 30.
I think the first one was against Wisconsin. I'd have to double check.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I think he can get it.
I think he's gonna get it. Like,
what do we set in the line at? 1.5?
Yeah, I think 1.5 or 1 is fair. I just like kind of going. When he played 31 minutes against Nebraska, he got 12. 20 minutes against Chicago State, he got 7. 18 minutes against Northwestern, he got 7. Because I do think one thing about Brad's system is he does like when the guards get the ball.
Because he wants to go and run. He wants to score within 7 seconds.
Yeah, I think he's going to break it. I think he's going to hit at least 3.
I think he gets at least 2, but I'm not going to go 3. 3's a lot. It'd be really hard for me to imagine that Illinois goes, 25 plus years from Derek Harper, I think is who it was, to Ayo, and that's how they get, and then they all of a sudden get like 5 in a 2-year time frame. That's a lot. That's a lot in college basketball. So it's a lot easier to get it in the NBA. You got 8 extra minutes, the way the game's played. I'll say he gets 2, but I don't think he gets 3.
I'm not totally against it, but I'll take the under, just because I feel like there's going to be some game where he has like a 9 somewhere. You're like, oh, or someone's going to forget that he's close to getting 10 rebounds and snag one like Felicio did D-Wade a few years back. So you just don't know. And then as far as my final thoughts on the season, again, I think at this point, and me and Alec have talked about this, and I'm sure Brandon will talk more about this as well. I mean, as the season goes on, we'll obviously write our stories. We'll cover the heck out of this beat and do things that we hope, it provides good content to the Illini fans. But the talk now is, what do you do in the postseason? Like, do you want to, make it past, well, obviously you want to, but can you make it past that second weekend? I mean, that's the challenge for Brad as a coach. Every school you've been at, you haven't been able to get past that second weekend. You have the talent to do it. So let's see if it happens. I mean, for example, for me, I wasn't on a beat last year. I was being a clear-cut fan. I ordered me a Ayo bat signal shirt, assuming that they were going to win their first 2 games of the tournament. And I got the thing in the mail after they had been bounced by Loyola. My mom went to Loyola, and it hurt me to have to deal with this woman for a few minutes. And she, she's not even a basketball fan. She actually wanted Illinois to win just because, I went there. But she's, there's also like that little jab in there, like, hey, your mom who doesn't care about basketball went to Loyola. She doesn't even care. So, I mean, for fans, I think it'll probably smooth over some frustrations if they're able to get to a weekend with like an actual name attached to it, Sweet 16, Elite 8, things like that.
Sam, you got any final thoughts? I'll go last if you'd like.
No, I think James hit it. James hit it right on the nail there. I think the regular season will be fun. Winning a regular season, whatever you can win the regular season, it would all be fun. It would all be good. But Now they did that last year. Now it's about the postseason. So
Yeah, I concur with the both of you. If you want an outside the box thing that I actually think might really matter to a lot of these guys, beating Mizzou, like they haven't done that in 3 years. Like, I don't really know how much they care about it. I think Brad really wants to get off the schneid and that kind of thing. That is a pretty decent rivalry game. It's going to be back in St. Louis. I expect Illinois fans to kind of show out for that. So yeah, I agree with that. And last year going into the season, it was all about Illinois, Iowa and that rivalry. I kind of feel like Illinois, Michigan is kind of like equal, maybe a little bit better than it, especially like the Hunter Dickinson quotes this offseason, which I hope, Sim, you're tracking for something for the Big Ten Beef article. I need another one of those. But yeah, like I'm excited for the energy that's around Illinois basketball and people liking them or people hating them for whatever reason. I think it's a lot of fun. Let's just kind of see where this goes, guys.
Yeah, you know me, I love smoke. So add it all, bring it on. Like, I think all that makes it better. Fans make it better. I mean, when guys go chest to chest, I mean, that picture of DeMonte chest to chest, you know, those types of things just make it more fun. So I'm definitely all in for that. And if you're a Michigan fan, if you're a Michigan player, you don't concede anything. And if you're an Illinois fan, if you're a Illini player, you feel like you got cheated. So, I mean, that to me just adds to it. Like, I will egg it on, like James Boyd, the instigator. I'm all for that stuff.
All right, before we get out of here, you two journalists have a busy weekend ahead. So, James, where can the people find you on Twitter, and what kind of stuff do you have to plug?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Romeoville Kid, RomeoVilleKid, hometown Romeoville, Illinois. That's pretty much all my social media. That's my Gmail. Don't email me, please don't. But if you want to, feel free. That's where you can find all my stuff. I'm still doing the obviously Illini football stuff, Illini basketball. Got some other stories that I'm hoping to get out there that are unique, I guess, just to what I'm doing. So I'm excited about that. And if you ever want to have a nice hot take about the NBA or basketball in general, come this way. I will welcome you, and we can definitely argue on Twitter respectfully.
James, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it as always. Super fun conversation with you. Super happy you were able to join us. And I feel like you're up there with like Sean Bach, who covers Iowa for 24/7 Sports, is like this is now like our 3, like 1 and 2, like youngest podcasts. And I like the younger conversation. It's less professional. So that makes it fun. So James, thanks for joining us. Make sure to take care of everyone. Thanks for listening to this edition of Inside the Arc. Have a good one, everyone.